What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and some more Birthright domain reviews here. So we're starting off our look at the Eastern Marches here and just kind of covering the area in general as we've now moved on from the Northern Marches, and this is definitely a vastly different area. So just to summarize here from the basic description, travelers trying to describe their visit to the Eastern Marches basically use either diverse or unpredictable or both to describe that. So, and given the geography, which we'll touch on in just a moment here, and sort of the borders of this area, you've got some interesting things going on, to be sure. So to the north, you have the Cielwoad, basically a savage forest never tempered by the hand of man, so it's one of the other elven domains you can run in this setting. Then, massive herds tended by a couple of landrunners graze in the central portion of the eastern region. Wild horses race across its southern plains, which gradually give way to wetlands, where a traveler can find himself mired in swamps and quicksand before he realizes what's happened. The thick canopy of leaves prevents light from reaching the sodden ground, and fierce storms occasionally lash the land, breaking what will not bend. So the eastern lands, positioned on the shores of the Gulf of Cornace, form a bridge between Anywhere and the rest of Cerelia. They hold the few known land-based routes into Brechtur and Canasi, though traversing the passes presents more risks than most traders care to bear. So, on the one hand, the Cielwoad blocks passage to Brechtur, and the Chimera's lands encompass the pass to Canasi, and neither of those are necessarily safe passages. So it's not hard to see why Anywhere traders have taken to the waters. It's also not hard to see why the rest of Anywhere has left the Eastern Marches mostly to their own devices. So these, compared to some of the other areas we've looked at, especially the Heartlands in the west and even the south, a lot of the domains here just aren't what we would maybe say are like major power players as far as like the typical Anywhere politics and things like that are concerned. So they've got their own issues to deal with, certainly. But for player characters running these domains, I would say almost unlimited potential there without, again, a lot of the issues that you run into running a domain elsewhere. Or if you're just adventuring here as well, just lots of great and unique opportunities. So, some say the Eastern Marches appear the least Anywerian of all the lands. Perhaps that's because of the Canasi influence drifting in from further east, or simply because the eastern regions tend not to display the backstabbing tactics so favored by virtually everyone else. The regions of this area seem more inclined toward non-aggression and diplomacy rather than the brute force and huge army tactics that you'll again find with the major power players, which we've all seen now over this the course of this series. People of the East echo this attitude. They seem even tempered, hard to provoke, and generally act friendly towards strangers. Of course, this is not to say they let others push them around. It's just basically they're not going to be dictated to by outsiders. So they're not quite as rugged, or in some cases, like we might say, maybe a little bit less civilized than the northern people, or as potentially uncivilized as the northern people. So they're actually civilized and very, in many cases, even more artistically inclined than other Anduirians, and maybe that's just because it's kind of like a crossroads of or borderland area between, again, the east, the north, with the Germanic influences of the Brecht culture, the sort of Middle Eastern influences of the Canasi, and then these other non-humans that are also nearby. So the main industry in the east is the raising and selling of horses and cattle. Stallions from Cornace fetch high prices across Anywhere. Horses trained by the region's own staff bring in even more. Naturally, these horses become prime targets for raids by elves or human bandits, and Coranian herders remain hard-pressed to keep the raiders at bay. Some herders will give their lives to protect their livelihoods. Dozens die each year in skirmishes with horse thieves. So you almost have like a, even though this is the East, you could almost have like a sort of a Wild West cattle and horse rustling issue that, easily presents some adventure hooks there. All right, and then the swamp areas here of the East are poorly mapped and little known. There's 3, and kind of gloomy names for all of them: Hope's Demise, Sunken Lands, and Spirit's End. And again, basically unlimited adventure hooks in and around here. So some say witches call these swamps home, luring people in it to consume them and their spirits. Others think the legendary dragon Swamp's Blood constitutes the true danger of the swamps, though no one has spotted the reptile in years. Regardless, all Easterners consider the swamps places of danger and ill omen to avoid at all costs. Now, that being said, when we dip over to the map, they take up kind of significant areas here, too. So For LNEA, basically one whole province is a swamp, and you got that sort of dangerous intersection here with the Elves over here, Cornace over there, and then sort of this other major swamp here in the Sunken Lands that also sits along this major river artery for trade and things like that. And then finally, in the south of Orso-Day, you have multiple provinces that also have to deal with that. So that being said, the dragon thing is something that's certainly interesting just because there are so few in this setting that really any one of them is, again, just a extreme rarity and should be treated, if that's going to be something in the campaign, as a serious event, much more so than I would say in other settings. So, and could be really interesting as well, just depending on how that is approached in a campaign, whether it's something where the dragon has just been dormant forever, but due to the player character's adventuring in its territory, that it maybe becomes active again and then goes on a rampage and has to be stopped and things like that. So that could be, again, quite interesting and could lead to some fame too if it was brought down. So then some of the adventure hooks and rumors that kind of start off our look at the Eastern Marches here. So things that are going on. Well, not all locals avoid the swamps, of course. Some fearless individuals make their living venturing there to collect rare herbs and wood, so scarce on the eastern plains. Escaped criminals sometimes find learning to live off the swamps preferable to swinging from the gallows pole. Still, others work as guides and scouts, leading hunters and treasure seekers into the swamps in search of big game or riches. So again, easy ways to get that worked into adventures or as issues that need to be dealt with if you are a domain ruler. The greatest threats in the east come from the Chimera. So again, we do have an Anche in this territory as well. Not nearly as dangerous as the Gorgon, but still something that needs to maybe someday be dealt with. Living nearby and from Canasi raiders, so you have that to deal with as well. Gore's expansionist urges make that domain to the west an ever-present threat too. Again, we've covered them in the Heartland, so you still have that major military threat here. So you're fairly far away from Avenil and Borrowing, so not really so much of an issue, but Gore is certainly the military power, even though it's a Heartlands domain, really not that far from the Eastern Marches and borders on two of them, right? Then finally, Elves still carry on their hunt, basically, from the Sealwoad, their homeland there. So again, in contrast to Tuarhiavel, where they're a little bit more open towards humans, although there's still that conflict just due to the trade here. The Sealwoad is definitely a different elven realm, and we'll come to that at some point in our series. The Elves, meanwhile, have to contend with the goblins of Markozor and Morkalad. Again, we reviewed those in the Northern Marches, so they have their own issues that kind of keep them busy. So the Elf Knights cannot hope to keep all these goblin armies in check. Some folks whisper that goblin forces have nearly penetrated to the heart of the domain, so the woodland demi-humans might even seek human support soon, which would, that's almost like the, cold day in hell when that will happen, but maybe that day is there for the elves. That might be a chance to really change history or forge some sort of different path than the history of this domain, or this setting has created, with the elves just really in this setting being xenophobic and just absolutely hating humans, and not without reason, of course. And then lastly, the dwarven kingdoms of the east face their own dangers as well. So the dwarves of Baruch Ajik maintain their ancient vigil on the Orogs beneath the Iron Peaks. So that's one of the other great things about this setting. It doesn't have the same kind of like Underdark setting as Forgotten Realms, but what is here is very, there's essentially the surface world, right? But then the things going on underneath, specifically again, relating to the dwarves and Orogs, is just like a never-ending, brutal war, that war of attrition that the dwarves are losing slowly. So they work even harder to contain the brutish humanoids under the earth, so they cannot threaten surface dwellers. Every year, the Orogs mount another expedition to reach the world above, and lately their growing strength has been taxing the dwarves unduly. Soon they may not be able to continue withstanding the staggering annual losses, and basically if that were to happen and they break the surface, then that will spell a lot of doom for nearby realms as well. So on the one hand, it seems a little bit more peaceful, a little less chaotic than the other domains as far as like the severe political backstabbing, contending for the Iron Throne and all that. But because of this intersection of different races, cultures, and things below the surface, figuratively and literally, it definitely is an area ripe for adventure and a great challenge. So again, whether you're running a domain, whether that's political or any of the other types of domains, or just adventuring in and around here, it's just a treasure trove of possibilities. So, and one that doesn't always get the most attention. Again, a lot of campaign play tends to focus on other areas, but the East is really just a great opportunity because, again, it can easily lead to adventures further east into the Kanazi lands and other things like that, or up to Brecht and so on and so forth. So it's just a great intersection, and again, lots of possibilities and presents different things, right? You have humans, you have elves, you have dwarves. You have an Anshe to deal with in the Chimera, and you have an ongoing actual civil war here. So lots of fun stuff. But let us know, guys, if you have played campaigns in the Eastern Marches, whether it's running, again, domains or adventuring. Love to hear your stories. Share that in the comments below, guys, and we'll be kicking off the series in earnest here as we move into our first domain. So thanks so much as always for watching, guys. Like and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.